The Ascended Era lasted 13 years. It was not a time of peace. Rather, it was a time of dominance. The Great Ignoring persisted. Only Turgo Tapid was permitted speaking time with Rose Roud. They met once a week so Rose Roud could berate her. Rose Roud was said to be so weakened from defeating the Vortex that she was translucent and the size of an infant. She refused to be looked at and spoke from the other side of a veil. While the Great Ignoring was a horrid calamity, the spiritualist would nonetheless find much joy and enrichment in the early days of the Ascended Era. The Vortex energies had dispersed, no longer empowered in a swirling core. Thus, the Wondrous Four and Hefferton finally were able to wield their powers. They controlled the Vortex. They owned the Vortex. They were above the Vortex. On the first day of the Ascended Era, Rose Roud would be summoned by a television. On it, she saw a child. Rose Roud would become obsessed with this child. This child would change everything, every single thing, and Rose Roud knew it as she looked upon the child upon the television. The child's name was Yera Peoples.
I fear that perhaps my time is nearing its conclusion. I am sick. Turgo's potions are no longer working. I worry she isn't even trying to heal me. If I die, let it be known I was a proud woman. The woman who taught the Ascended Rose how to wield her powers and body. But now she doesn't speak to me. She doesn't look at me. No one does except for Turgo the twat, who angrily feeds me my potion every day, throwing at me like a rabid bitch. But at least there is my sweet, soft Harriet. Harriet, sweet, wonderful, silky, gorgeous Harriet. She is ignorant and loyal to the Ascended Rose, but she still is kind enough to spend time with me. And she is kind enough to laugh with me, to nuzzle my forehead and ease me, to give my love a place to flow inside of, although she has been quite resentful since I moved her hand toward my under region. I was not doing it as a mode of perversion. I was merely showing her the depleted state of my sacral chakra. Oh God, oh dear shit. I hope she returns to the room. I hope she gives me a hug. I worry they've changed the key. I haven't had potion in a while. This is Donna Heschley. The date is May 11th, 1985. Oh dear, I don't want to die.
At Donna Heschley's funeral, Rose Roud spoke of her mentor and friend with disappointment and disgust. After delivering her speech, she continued ignoring everyone. She did not let it be known, but she was morbidly depressed by the death of her mentor, and she carried regret over the mean things she had said to her on her deathbed. With Donna Heschley's death, what was once the Wondrous Five, and then the Wondrous Four, was now the Wondrous Three. That night, Rose Roud watched with rage as Hefferton buried Donna Heschley. The date was June 22nd, 1985. Rose Roud had defeated the Vortex. Her army stood strong, and the Ascended Rose Roud's Vortex was slowly becoming a place of prominent power. But even still, she was miserable and isolated. She soaked in her buke and thought of her dead friend. She tried to connect with her that night, but she couldn't. Donna Heschley would not answer back. Rose Roud, the greatest psychic medium to ever live, would try to connect with Donna Heschley every single night until her own death. Donna Heschley never answered back. Harriet Johanna was the third, thus far unmentioned member of the now Wondrous Three. She was a jack of many trades. An empath, a psychic, a partial healer, and a tarot master. She acted as primary aid to the Ascended Rose Roud. During the Great Ignoring, Rose Roud would deliver orders telepathically. Harriet Johanna's primary task was to acquire the child, while Turgot, Bishop Garrison, and Hefferton took great joy in the Ascended Era. Harriet Johanna was terribly affected by the Great Ignoring. She had taken significant joy in making Rose Roud her breakfast and cleaning the Ascended Rose Roud's robes and face after dinner. But now her days were spent hopelessly pursuing a child celebrity. Meanwhile, a love affair began to swirl. Turgot, Tapid, and Hefferton had grown close during their long development process of a new prototype device, the FESHP. Turgot would often ask Hefferton, why was he not wondrous? Why did he allow Rose Roud to emasculate him? One night, Hefferton watched Harriet Johanna, sobbing, smoking a cigarette by the buplin. It was then that an idea struck him. He would be the one to acquire the child. He would end the Great Ignoring, and he would be proclaimed wondrous once and for all. Being a highly disciplined empath, Bishop Garrison was able to tune into the emotions of others. This, he claimed, is why he spent the entire Second War weeping in the bathtub. Everyone absolutely loathed Bishop Garrison. His only friend was his pen pal, the Hungarian prince. Bishop Garrison wrote to him every day. He was very, very proud that he had a friendship with such an esteemed man. On Christmas of 1987, Bishop Garrison would do something unthinkable. He invited the Hungarian prince to the Vortex property for supper. As has been clarified many times, there were and are still no visitors allowed to the Vortex, not even royalty. This was a clear violation of Rose Roud's rule. Bishop Garrison spent the next week engaged in some sort of bizarre slumber party with the Hungarian prince. The other spiritualists reacted in absolute horror as they faced something they hadn't faced in years: company. Rose Roud remained in her room every time the Hungarian prince would visit, in righteous rebuke of her soldiers' mortifying insubordination. He would be taught a painful lesson, because the authority of the Ascended Rose Roud would not and could not be challenged. And, as has been made very clear, there were and are no visitors allowed to the Vortex. The FESHP was a work in progress for years. It wasn't until the summer of 1988 that a working version was placed atop the hill. Rose Roud herself attended the unveiling ceremony, although she stood away from everyone and refused to look at them. The FESHP was a device for assessing vortex intensity. According to the FESHP, however, the vortex was beginning to swirl again with ferocity. At the ceremony, for a brief moment, the Great Ignoring was lifted as the Ascended Rose Roud walked up to Hefferton and slapped him. In front of everyone, in front of his lover Turgot, in front of the Vortex itself, she slapped him on the face. She slapped him on the rear. She slapped him and slapped him and slapped him. "How dare you?" she screamed. "I have defeated the Vortex. It sits there bowing to me. It does not swirl, and it will never swirl again." She slapped him once more, and she left Hefferton bleeding on the ground. It was a terrible unveiling ceremony. The morning after the slapping, Hefferton left on an airplane to travel to California. he had a plan. He would get very drunk on a series of connecting flights until he was kicked off. From there, he would stay at a series of hotels where he would order food and vomit inside nice bathrooms. Hefferton was very excited about this. He needed some time off after the slapping, and he wanted to avoid seeing his lover Turgo after being repeatedly slapped in front of her. While Hefferton flew over the desert, drunk, sad, and happy, something truly wondrous would happen. Seated next to him on the airplane was a mother and her daughter. Hefferton began talking to the mother and learned she was also a spiritualist. He drunkenly confided all of his shames and humiliations to this mother and child. When he got off the plane, the mother invited Hefferton to join them at an event. Completely intoxicated, Hefferton showed up to the taping of a television show hosted by a child psychic. The lights dimmed, and the announcer shouted, "Please welcome the little girl who can talk to the dead." Hefferton smiled proudly to himself as some puke fell out of his mouth. His plan had worked. He was in